have such sights to show you.
We're Poppin the Scary horror podcast here. I'm your host Coale, and with me as always, I have my good friend and co-host Aaron. Aaron, happy Halloween!
Happy Halloween!
Yes, technically it's still before Halloween, because obviously we had to record the episode, but this episode's coming out on Halloween, so...
Yeah.
You know, and what better way to celebrate Halloween than to watch Terrifier? One of it's one of the films. One of the films we will be watching today. So, for those that listened to the last episode towards the end, during the teasing of this episode or whatever, I could not hide my feelings about watching this film, and I haven't gone too much into detail with Aaron about it. So, Aaron, I could be misremembering. This might be the first episode where I am legitimately going into this movie being like not usually neutral or excited. What do you infer from that?
Yeah, the way you were not excited about it makes me think it's like really grotesque. Is that the case? Is it the gore? Is it like sexual assault? Like what is it? Because I know there's only a small list of things that make you squeamish on this horror movie podcast, but
I don't know. Do you think it's better if you know or don't know?
I guess we'll find out. That's what I'm guessing. Those are the questions in my head that I'm anticipating from this movie, but I really don't know anything besides that I've seen like the posters and stuff for the new movie, and it's a clown, I guess. But besides your reaction and the few pictures I've seen, that's all I know.
Yeah, because like obviously you had never heard about Art the Clown or the Terrifier series, period. And that's why you're a lot happier than me. And now the audience may be confused as to why I'm reacting the way I am, but I don't know whether to mention my feelings on the film currently as it stands, or just to kind of be like, yep, it's sure... It's a film.
Picked up on the vibe.
Well, it's weird because it's not as one note as you would think, because man, whenever it comes to Terrifier, it is very much yeah, see, even to trying to I guess to summarize it, it's not as one note as you would think it would be. It's not a scenario where it's just like, oh man, like this is going to be like the most wretched thing of all time. But it's also not like, oh man, I can't wait to dive into this. But it's also not like a, it's kind of like middling. And because here's a weird thing I will say about this, prefacing it. I guess the best way I could describe it is a love-hate relationship with this film. I think that's probably the best way I could describe it. Because, for starters, this has all been an independent franchise with Damien Leone heading it and everything. And it's been that way ever since he had the conception of Art the Clown, which was a character he created for this anthology movie called All Hallows Eve. And so you might be wondering, why aren't you watching that film instead of Terrifier 1? And I'll tell you why. It's because I hate All Hallows Eve. There is no love-hate. There is only hate with that film. Okay. And I know some people like the anthology movie and everything else. And if you do, more power to you, bud. It ain't for me. And even with Art the Clown, it's not significant enough to where I'm like, oh man, in order to really understand art, we need to go watch the very first appearance. I don't know. It's like, I don't know. It's like a Marvel film. Like, it's like, sure, you could watch it to learn little bits of it, or I guess old Marvel. New Marvel is like, you gotta watch everything to get the fullest experience.
You gotta watch the 4 TV shows.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, so will we review All Hallows Eve on the podcast? I don't friggin' know, but I'm gonna guarantee you it's not a priority. Comparatively to the hundreds of films we could watch, I'm not gonna review it for the time being. At the very least, I figured Terrifier's the best place to start, especially since the majority of the public, that's what they're going to lean to first, because obviously Terrifier 3 just came out in theaters this month. Topical. So if you're going to start the series, you're going to start with Terrifier 1 naturally. Probably, there. Yeah, and so it's funny because I didn't really get around to watching the Terrifier series until this year. Because the first Terrifier, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't really ever hear too much about it. It wasn't until Terrifier 2, which came out in 2022, that I started hearing stuff like, oh man, Art the Clown's crazy, and it's such a crazy, inventive film franchise. And so then I'm like, oh, okay, you know, but it didn't prompt me to watch it until, like, everyone is hyping up 3 and everything, which 3 has been a spectacular smash hit. Like, I don't know if you know about the box office numbers, how it beat, like, Joker de la Four, or whatever it's called. Like,
yeah, okay.
$200 million budget film from Warner Brothers lost to an independent film, which I think had a budget, I want to say, of, like, 2 million, I think it was, something like that. I'll correct it in the episode video in case I'm wrong, but it's definitely made splashes in the horror community for a couple of reasons. I like to focus on the independent endeavor and everything, and just showing that an IP can be made from an independent studio as opposed to something that's just more corporate, I guess, or whatever. Because they have tried to take the Terrifier franchise. Bigger studios, once they saw the success of 2, they were like, oh, we'll release 3, but you can't do this, that. And Damien's like, no, I'm just going to release it myself if that's the case. Like, I'm not going to have my vision compromised just to satiate the higher-ups at Corpse. Nice. But, yeah, so I really appreciate that aspect of it. It's spearheading it. The more so identity of the Terrifier franchise is where I get very... I don't know. It's like the best way I can describe it is Art the Clown. I recognize him as a horror icon. I welcome him to the horror family, but I want him to stay on the opposite side of the room. He's like the relative you don't really want to hang out with, but you acknowledge he's family, and you're like, yeah, you're family, but I don't like talking to you very much. I'll say hi, give the awkward hug bye.
I was about to say, it's not the one you hug, that's the one you handshake. You're like,
That's
good to see you, man.
Even better. So, obviously, you're pretty perceptive on how I feel about it. Given how I'm feeling about it, how does that make you feel about it going into this episode?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I guess that clears up some of my worries about maybe the contents of the film. But I mean, I still, I don't know. I'm interested to see, especially now that I know that it's a little more indie. Because I don't know. I live under a rock for certain things, so I don't know. This could be a huge corporate, mega movie if they made 3 of them. But no, yeah, knowing that it's indie and stuff is kind of a cool vibe going in. But,
yeah, well, I'm glad you're at a much more neutral standpoint, despite my trepidation diving back in to the.
I'm a neutrality rock. You can't shake me.
I'm Switzerland, motherfucker.
I'll find out for myself if I'm gonna hate this movie or love it, or do your little love-hate dance.
Yeah. The love-hate dance is a dance I will use with the Terrifier films for sure. So, buckle up, buckaroos, because we're gonna watch Terrifier. Holy hell!
Woo!
Oh my God! Wait, are you Art
a clown? You are! Son of a bitch! Look, man, if I gotta die, fuck it. But you overdo it, buddy. You overdo it, and I don't want you to stab me a million times. Please.
And we are back from watching Terrifier.
Terrifier.
Yep. Aaron.
Yeah.
Do you better understand my feelings?
Yeah. Was an intense movie. Yeah. Graphic. The way I was thinking about it is like this is more of a spectacle than it is a movie.
Yeah. I can see that.
Plot level is like 0. It's just horror, yeah, and indulging in that aspect to the extreme. So, yeah, interesting film.
Yeah. It's one of those weird things that whenever I went to go watch it, I was not prepared for how much they were going to lean into the gore aspect.
Yeah.
And,
grotesque is a proper word for it.
And, I've seen all the Saw films. They could get pretty brutal. But I feel like Terrifier relishes in it.
Yeah, I think it was focused on pushing that aspect as far as it could.
Mm-hmm. And it's not even like over the top like blood or whatever, like Evil Dead, where it just is comedic. A lot of times they really do relish in the horror aspect of it.
Yeah, I do think it in many aspects ended up being comedic just because of how over the top it was. Like,
True.
But it was trying to be genuinely grotesque and horrifying, and it did accomplish that as well. I think it was so intense that it ended up being like funny to me though.
Well, that's good. I don't think I got there a lot of points. But yes, so probably no surprise to you now, the Terrifier series has made grounds for being very, very gory and violent.
Yeah.
So while a lot of people do like that aspect of it, I mostly just, and I guess we'll talk about it more with characters, but I enjoy other aspects of the film more than I do the gore. It's kind of like with Saw. I don't really watch it for the traps. I watch it for the stupid convoluted plot line, I'm a Kingdom Hearts fan, so
sure,
this is my stomping ground and everything. So I just kind of like the different aspects of it,
but get there. There's definitely elements of this that I think were really good, and then some that I think were really bad. I get the love-hate.
Yes. Well, that's good. That's good.
I understand it.
Yeah, so let's dive into the plot of Terrifier then. Let's not keep the audience waiting here. So basically, the story of Terrifier focuses on two friends, Tara and Dawn, who are out on Halloween night getting back from a party and are trying to sober up whenever all of a sudden they meet a man dressed up as a clown in black and white attire.
Yep.
And after they're like, that's weird, and they try to go off, he keeps popping up no matter what. And then before they know it, Art is in the deep pursuit of trying to chase Tara and Dawn down. So yeah, that's basically the plot of it.
It's not just the plot, that's the entire movie synopsis, actually.
Yeah.
Nothing else happens but what we've just described.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, here at Poppin the Scary Horror Podcast, we're used to paper-thin plots, like, be it any slasher genre where it's just a free-for-all and everything. But truly, there is nothing else going on. It is very much poor saps who have the misfortune of running into Art the Clown, and that's a movie.
Yeah. I very much got the vibe that like the kills, the stunts, the characters are what they had going in here, and they were like, plot would just distract from all of that, so let's not have any of it. And I think it's not a bad decision, but it does limit, I think, the potential that this movie can grow for me. But
that is, it's hard because like if your story's not there, then
I think then that's what I mean by spectacle. Yeah, that just turns into a spectacle if there's no narrative. Really, it's just like people trying to escape the killer, And I think the issue with that is you have to make the spectacle really something worth spectating, and that's what Terrifier tries to do with the intense gore. I think. Whether or not it lands, I think, is dependent on whether or not that's what you're here for.
Yeah, because I'm gonna be honest, like, I wasn't worried about the story. Like, whenever they're throwing the spectacle that was the last thing on my mind. I'm like, I just wish the story was better right now.
Yeah,
First time watching it, as opposed to, holy hell.
That's where I ended up, because I would think I was really cool with the spectacle for the first, what felt like 45 minutes, and then after that, I think I was like, yes, this is why plot exists, because, like, there's only so much of that you could take, and then you need a break, you know, and you need something else to happen. You need something else to progress. Otherwise, you're just looking at people getting carved up.
yeah, very, very much the case, which, don't get me wrong, the spectacle is spectacular in many definitions.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's hard to comment on a plot whenever it doesn't exist, but...
Because that's not the point of this movie. Yeah,
exactly.
So I think we just... it's like, don't go in expecting that. I think this movie is specifically designed for the niche of people that want to see gore, and they want that's what they enjoy. But...
Now, I do have a question about plot, because this is, like, very much a debatable sort of scenario. What is better, for a film to have a plot, but it's just awful, badly written, just absolutely abhorrent, or one that does not exist at all?
I think, like, it's better so it depends what the strategy for not having a plot is, because you have to have a reason, you know what I mean? Like, and I think the reason this movie doesn't have a plot is so it can focus on the spectacle, and that is better for this movie than it would be if it had a really trash plot.
Yeah.
Because, like, if the plot is so bad that it's detracting from the spectacle, it's like, you know, it minimizes. Like, if we saw all the gore and stuff we saw, and then it was like, oh, my divorce or whatever, and we're listening to 10 minutes of dumb narrative about that, then it would completely detract from the, you know, so that would be worse. But I think some movies, like, you know, if I was trying to watch some other, well, I don't know, like a different horror movie that's a little more plot driven. We tried to watch Lake Mungo with no plot. It would be awful, you know what I mean? It would be a completely disastrous film. So I think it really depends on what you're trying to go for, is my long answer. But the short answer is, like, yeah, this movie probably benefited from having no plot more than it would have had from having a really bad plot. But, like, I think it limits the ceiling of how good your movie can be, because then it's relying completely. I think there are spectacle movies that are like 10 out of 10, probably. I don't know. I haven't seen, like, but I think there are spectacle movies that do spectacle really well. I think, like, Pacific Rim was a spectacle movie. Nobody's watching that for plot. There's no plot. They removed the plot entirely. It's just you want to see giant robot fight a big monster or whatever. Great, that's what that movie is. You know, Disney's Fantasia, I think, is that. It's just animation spectacle. I haven't actually watched it since I was a child, so I apologize if I'm, like, completely not...
Oh, you're good.
Completely misremembering this movie. But you know, I think there are spectacle movies that could do spectacle really well. It's just, like, at that point, it's like making a really good piece of art. And the artistic quality that they're going for here is, like, indie budget horror, like, gruesomeness. And it's like, if you're really into that, then I think it does that fairly well. For me, I'm not into that. And for me also, it's but I can, like, I can respect it. But it's so even though I'm not into it, I want to give, like, an unbiased, like, this is what I think. And I think it doesn't quite hit, like, even 10 out of 10 on the spectacle end, which just severely limits the rest of it. You know what I mean?
Yes, that's true. It's like, you know, it's like if you're having, like, different elements pull their weight, even if one is pulling a lot, if it doesn't reach that 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
Because one is not pulling its weight, it sinks back.
Because you're removing a significant element of what a movie is, and that's a narrative plot line. And, like, not all movies need to have a narrative, so that's totally fine. It's just whenever you take that out, you have to really know what you're doing. And I think they had an idea of what they're doing, so it's, like, executed okay. But I think it kind of drags on too long, and then the spectacles themselves aren't attention grabbing enough for me to really give this a super high score. But I think that's what you have to do. That's the danger of removing a plot, is then you have to fill the audience's attention and interest with all those other aspects. So all those other aspects become so much more important.
Yeah. I think you are wholeheartedly correct. I was curious on what your perception would be, because I know a lot of people have different aspects of it. So I think yeah, I can't dispute with any of that. That's pretty much right on the money and everything. Yep, you're good. But one thing that I do find to actually be fairly decent is the cast of the film.
Yeah.
That all of the performances were pretty good, which is nice. It's nice that, you know, they're pretty strong performances. I especially loved Jenna Coale, who played Tara.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
That's 10 out of 10 main character. Why does it take movies so long to figure out you just gotta slap a goth girl in there? That's
Yes!
all we want. We just want goth girls in our horror movies. That's all we need. How many episodes of Poppin the Scary have we recorded, and how many goth girls have we seen? The ratio, I know, is lacking.
It's criminal.
It
In
is.
all honesty, we need to represent.
Yeah.
And
So,
Poppin the Scary loves their goth women.
And then sidekick being a dumb bimbo blonde, perfect. I mean, yeah.
It's a perfect compliment.
It's the
you
combo,
know?
yeah.
It's sort of like the Laurel and Hardy, the Abbott and Costello,
Exactly.
you know, goth and blonde,
Goth
you
and
know.
bimbo, yeah.
Yeah.
Slay.
Yeah. But in all honesty, like, it's kind of weird because obviously, as stated previously, I've seen this film only once. And so seeing it again, I was kind of like unsure where I was going to be because I knew the speed bumps that were ahead or whatever. But watching her performance again, I was just like, that's a really good performance. Like, she's good at being, like, horrified and scared.
Yeah.
She's also good at just, like, being realistically uncomfortable anytime art pops up. And it's just like, no.
There are definitely characters that make stupid horror movie decisions, but, like, I feel like you can't make your protagonist that person, and they don't, so that's good.
Yeah, and there's a lot of decisions they have her partake in that doesn't feel like, okay, this just doesn't feel realistic right now. And I really enjoyed her. Her performance was honestly very much 10 out of 10, and good for Damien Leone heightening the goth aesthetics because she's wearing like a skeleton outfit dress thing.
She's wearing like a skeleton dress with like fucking garter clips to her high heels. I mean, they were just like, let's put a sexy goth girl as the main character because we're already removing plot. So characters just need to be one-dimensional, immediately identifiable, and lacking of substance like the rest of the movie is. And because that was the MO, they nailed it.
Yeah, for sure. And so I have nothing but praise. In all honesty, like, this is also the part that I'm kind of happy that there is no plot because it seems ripe for a thing of like, oh, what if there was like a big, you know, drama going on with this. And then because like, while this film does have most like parts where it's like nothing's really going on, sometimes you kind of need nothing to go on as opposed to like a half-assed plot that tries to string things along. And I know some people will argue, be like, well, at least they tried. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, sometimes, sure, you gave it your best effort, but sometimes a bad plot just pisses me off as opposed to nothing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, the plot, I mean, has to be in service to everything else you're doing, and if it's not, then it's gonna ruin the movie.
Yeah, but Jenna, kudos to you in this film. Like, I have nothing but high praise. Definitely one of the upper regions of women in horror, especially of the last. Yeah, just whenever it comes to performance, aesthetic, and just, I mean, it's not like deep character or something like, Sidney Prescott or anything like that. But at the same point,
I don't think it was a difficult acting job, but nonetheless, she nailed it.
Yes, correct. And let's go ahead and go to her cohort, Dawn, played by Catherine Corcoran. And I think she's also a great foil for the situation. Yeah, she does enact more so the stupid like horror tropes, just like not seeing art as a threat at all whatsoever. But she is also inebriated as well, which I'm sure definitely makes
obnoxious, oblivious, and inebriated. It's a great character combo.
But you know, at the same point, you could see both of them being like friends realistically. There's that thin line. But it is, because sometimes in horror films, you're like, why do they even hang out with each other? They seem to hate each other or whatever. But she was great because definitely sort of just added more humor to the plot and everything, which, you know, that's one of the things in horror that's always nice, getting like a couple of funny moments and everything. But while I was more of a fan of Tara as a character, and I'm glad we got to spend a lot of our time with her going through the film, Dawn was still good. And they had like good, kind of more organic sounding conversations there or whatever. So it was nice. It was nice. Definitely not quite as big of a fan, but it was still kudos. Like, you did the job perfectly. I had zero issues with her acting skills or anything like that. But again, given definitely a little bit less than just kind of like, unfortunately, like Aaron describes, a dumb bimbo blonde and everything, which is...
That was her character.
Yes, that was her character
but,
and everything.
I think she executed it well. Yeah, and I think she does a great job being a foil in sort of the first part of the film, because she's a drunk person that you have to, like, deal with, you know?
Yes.
And that sort of provides tension in that crucial spot where there really isn't any yet, because the murdering hasn't started happening in slasher movies. So I feel like they you know, they juggled their pieces around fairly well.
And
I think that's one of the elements that they do. They create some little tension parts with her character at the beginning. But...
I think you're right on the money there. And obviously, usually I save the slasher for last, so I'm just gonna keep on going with that. I guess one of the other people we could talk about is Tara's sister Victoria, who does show up later in the film and everything. And while I thought it was like, I thought she was well acted and everything, competently acted and everything, I didn't get quite as much of an attachment, but I think it's just sort of because she just arrives a little later, and by the point like she arrives, the film's already rolling and going, so you don't have a lot of time to sort of just latch on and get to know her character, which is obviously no fault of the actress at all whatsoever. I feel like overall Samantha Scafidi did very well, like just competently acted, everything else. It's just whenever there's already like no time being spent on plot, let alone character development, you're kind of at like slim pickings. And all you could get from her is she's the responsible older sister.
I think she honestly suffers from, and I'm not even like joking when I say this, she suffers from being one of the few characters that doesn't have a costume. You know?
Yes! Oh my gosh, that is so true, because she's not really big into Halloween, because she's like working on a paper whenever Tara calls her up.
Even all the side characters, even like the pest control guy you see later, the crazy person in the building, the police officers, they are characters that benefit from being immediately recognizable. You're like goth girl, bimbo. Got it. Scary clown, pizza worker. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, and because there's no plot to actually develop any of these characters, that's what you need. But her, whenever you look at her, it's like, who's this woman? You know what I mean? Because they actually have to develop her. And they try. They give her like 3 lines in the beginning or whatever, where she's like, I'm working on my midterm. But like, even like, I mean, honestly, for this movie, this sounds so dumb to like talk about as a movie critique. Honestly, for this movie, she probably should have just showed up dressed as a slutty schoolgirl. Like, because then it'd be like, schoolgirl, got it. I know the character.
Or even just like dress up as like, I don't know, like just
or just in a school uniform
just,
or something.
Just something like that.
Or sorority outfit. I don't know, like something that's recognizable, because every other character in this movie has that.
Yeah, because it does take place on Halloween, while you get some Halloween vibes, for the most part, it's only a Halloween film in like saying it's Halloween night.
Right, like the date. That's it.
Yes, the date.
The reason why they are dressed up, the 2 girls are dressed up in costumes.
Yeah.
Why it would be normal to see a clown,
Yes, for sure. So, unfortunately, there's nothing too much to say, because she's just merely there to kind of react towards what's going on with the story at that given point in time. One thing I will say, you did mention the Exterminator, who is Mike the Exterminator, played by Matt McAllister. I actually enjoyed his aesthetic of like the blue jumper suit, just smoking his cig and just listening to all these
chemicals. Yeah,
he's just like, yeah, you know, gotta deal with rats, you know, doing that. And I was just like, I'm already with this guy 100%. He's just like, I'm just trying to gas up the place, dude, and move along.
Late night rat crusher.
Late night rat
He's the Charlie Day of this building.
You know, got his rat stick.
Beat around a few rats.
Oh my gosh.
Careful for the rats. Don't sniff my glue.
Yeah, well, yeah, I wish Charlie Day would have been a part of this film, but considering this film's entire budget was $35,000,
Yeah.
I don't think that's even enough to get Charlie Day.
No, but it does give me like season 1 Always Sunny in Philadelphia Charlie Day vibes. They could have gotten that Charlie Day.
That's true. Get like season 1 Charlie back whenever all the characters were a lot more refined and as the series continued on. But I thought his character was fine. He was definitely just more so like there to allow the characters to keep moving forward because he's cleaning the building and everything. And she's like, "Oh, I really need to use restroom." He's like, "I can't really let you in here. It's not my building." And she's like, "Please." And it's like, all right, yeah, fine.
Yeah.
Doing that. And he's just doing his job and then gets wrapped up in the story along with everything else. But yeah, and while definitely there's definitely some questionable decisions he makes towards the later half of the film. I think that's just common for horror films, just to have blatantly bad decisions pop up and that's the one they take.
Yeah, I think that's also just kind of the arc of this movie is as it goes on, I think they kind of run out of like ways that make sense for people to get places and they just start shoving people in rooms. But that's a little bit of a critique of mine. It's not like that disorienting, but it is a little bit just like, and then we crawl over here and then we go here.
Yeah, so and one of the other characters that we do mention that pops up is the homeless woman, or as the credits call her, Cat Lady, played by Puya Mosini.
That's the most surprising credit I've seen, because I don't remember her with a single cat.
I know. There was one scene, like one tidbit with a cat, but she wasn't holding it. It was like on her little
because I know
table.
When they introduce her is when we start hearing some meows, and then she shows up. But
yeah, there was only one picture of a cat. What?
Can't be called Cat Lady if you're never holding a cat.
I know.
What she is holding is a baby doll.
I know. I wish there would have been a cat. Get some like Jonesy action like they did in Alien.
Yeah.
Your film's already automatically heightened if it has cats in it. True. That's just my humble opinion.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But I felt like overall, her whole character is just crazy homeless person.
True.
And
hers is more cut out than I think the other ones are. Even more of a stereotype than the Italian pizza guys were. Hey, I'll throw you out of here, man. It was about a gabagool, But she's just like, I have a mental illness. Would you like to see my child? And it's just like, all right, like this. I don't know. One of my critiques of this movie is I think it knows what scary is to some degree, but it doesn't know what creepy is. At least for me, it feels so derivative in the fact, like, isn't this insane woman holding this porcelain doll? Isn't that creepy? There's there's a part where the clown is on a tricycle and it's like, this is creepy, right? You guys are creeped out by clowns on tricycles, and I feel like it's just trying way too hard to be like, this is creepy, right? This is creepy.
We'll talk about Art the Clown next, but I have my own thoughts about that scene there, but maybe it's just my own screwed up perception of it. But overall, homeless gal is like fine, but she would be relatively sane at some parts before diving back into the insanity.
She's got moments of lucidity,
So I don't know if that's
but she's definitely
good
introduced.
or bad.
She's introduced to be like, all right, this woman's crazy.
Yes, very much so. And you're just like, okay, well, gotcha. So yeah, I mean, aside from that, I will give one shout out to the TV host that you see at the beginning of the film.
Yeah.
Her name being Monica Brown, played by Katie McGuire. She was actually in All Hallows Eve. Not as the same character, but as a different one, because basically All Hallows Eve is an anthology film where they find this video cassette tape and they watch like these weird stories that play on this cassette tape that they found. And she's like the mom babysitter. I can't remember. I think it's mom, sitting there just watching the movie and everything. So it was kind of interesting just to kind of have her be recasted to the film. But unlike her, David Howard Thornton, who plays Art the Clown, this is his debut as Art the Clown, because originally in All Hallows Eve it was played by a different actor, and I don't know why, but I guess for some reason or another they brought him in. Now you look at the poster and it's like literally his face on there on the Terrifier poster and everything. what did you think of Art the Clown in this film?
I think he's acted really well. I think the person that acts him, he has good mannerisms. I like his creepy smile with the black teeth and everything. Like, there are elements about this character I like. I like that they tried to make him like a mime. He's like silent but still scary.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think there are a lot of elements of him that are just, I mean, anytime you make a clown, I feel like it's hard to make him actually scary.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just me. Because, like, I don't know. Clown scary is like... Clowns don't exist outside of the realm of horror. So, they like, in the modern age, like, nobody hires a clown for their children's birthday party anymore or whatever. It's just, yeah. So, it always seems like an old-fashioned kind of hokey thing for me. I don't know. I don't find clowns scary, but for the subsect of the population that does, I bet he's super spooky. But I don't know. So there are elements about his design I like. There are others that I think just seem old-fashioned and derivative, and they're like trying to play on that to be like classic horror thing, but it just ends up being like stuff I've seen before, honestly. But
That's fair. Whenever I saw this film, he was my favorite part to watch, but not in the ways where he killed people. It's whenever he would just
when he's
screw
like
around.
stalking and he does really good in that aspect, the lead up to the kill.
Yeah, and so you mentioned like the tricycle scene or whatever that pops up, and for me, I honestly never saw it as the director trying to be creepy. It's just, you want to see something really stupid. And I think whenever I framed it like that, it just was funny. It just ultimately made me laugh. And in all honesty, if the whole film was just him goofing and gaffing around and no kills, I'd be like, I feel like I got my money's worth.
Yeah.
This is not too bad.
There are a couple things. There's one thing in particular that I think really highlights his goofing and gaffery, but I can't say it in the non-spoiler section. But no, I do agree. I think there are elements when he shows that part of his character that's like ends up being really effective. But.
Yeah, and so that was the one thing that I really did like the first time I watched it, where I'm like, I love this. I love the goofy clown shenanigans going on. I'm absolutely in love with this aspect. But then as soon as it would get abhorrently violent and everything, that's where I'm like, whoa, all right, settle down. Like, no joke. And we could talk more about it later. I truly had to disassociate watching those scenes and just being like, those are some good effects. Yep. Yep.
No, I did the old watching from my peripheral vision for parts of it. I'm just like, yep, I can kind of get an idea of what's going on here.
Yes.
I don't need to see all the intestines come out.
But, yeah, exactly. And one thing that I think does lend to his acting, I figured this out just recently. He was I can't talk. He was an understudy for 5 years under Stefan Coale.
Oh.
Do you know who that is?
Stefan Coale Magnuson, the chess player.
No, I mean, I'm sure you're right, but no, it's a Robbie Rotten.
Oh, he does give those kind of vibes.
Yes, he was this understudy for 5 years.
That's so funny. Yeah, he has that sort of animated quality of
doing that. And in all honesty, that's, I think, is what helps give him an identity and everything. And that's what's kind of helped cement him as a cultural icon in the horror realm as of late. Because I'm sure you've seen, at the very least, Art the Clown merch everywhere. And he's basically just solidified himself as a horror icon. And someone actually made an interesting observation, I guess. Sure. In the fact that the horror genre has tried to recreate a lot of horror icons, because if you look at like the last true horror icon, I can't remember what it was. Ghostface was certainly one of the latter ones. True. As well as
Jigsaw, but that's even
earlier. Jigsaw. That's what I was thinking. That they mentioned that was kind of like the last iconic one, because the rest is like, you got the Purge, and it's like, well, who's the icon of the Purge really? Exactly. And then you would have like different sort of stuff, and really the only one I could think of potentially is Pennywise the Clown, at least the reimagined version they did with the 2017 thing. But
even that's based on,
that's exactly it. Yeah. That's exactly it. And so Art the Clown's been like one of the first organic original icons to pop up and actually have some grounded validity where people are like, yes, like he literally has his own popcorn bucket at the movie theaters now, like big chain movie theaters. So he's made himself an icon, and that's honestly kind of brilliant, and that's why I do have a lot of respect for this film and this franchise. And I'm like, you literally had a guy make an independent film, make a horror icon that's going to be remembered, at least in the horror community. So, but
he is pretty well defined, I think, as a character just from this movie alone, for having no lines, you know.
Yeah, and that being said, and having seen the second one, I have not seen the third one as of yet. It's funny because I look at his performance, one that I did like really find myself attached to, and watching it a second time round and being like, oh man, I can't wait for the goofs and gaffs. I was surprised he was not that funny all the time. There are times where he's just frowning more so than anything, and so that's why, or playing it like very straight laced and everything, and that's why I was like, I remember him being a lot more funny. In the film. So
he's got moments, but yeah, that's definitely not all the time.
And I guess maybe that's because I was just looking forward to those goofs and gaffs, and then watching the first one, just kind of realizing there's not that many funny moments as I thought. There definitely is, but there isn't as much. So that was one of the things that I'm like, and I won't spoil anything, but in 2, David Howard Thornton, like from the time he was in this film in 2016 to whenever Terrifier 2 came out, which was in 22, he had a lot of time to explore the character mentally, to where by 2, without spoiling anything, he knows what the character is by 2. And I think maybe Damien Leone also knows as well, but I think David Howard Thornton brings a lot of himself to the role as well. So it's just kind of like interesting. I guess it's sort of like looking at evolution of Jason and everything, to where it takes a couple of films before you get a grounded idea on who the character is, because obviously Sackhead Jason with like overalls running at the speed of light with a pickaxe is not the hockey mask machete wielding killer we would know to come later on. So I feel like this is a situation that like, I feel like this is a better representation of Art the Clown, especially because in All Hallows Eve, I'll just let you know, he literally shows up for a collective time of like maybe 5 to 10 minutes of the whole film. Like he is barely in the film, just like little remnants, because again, it's an anthology story focusing on different stuff. So he just sporadically pops up then and there. And even then, I don't remember liking him that much. It was just sort of like, neat, I know where Art the Clown came from, which is why I felt very strong about, if we're going to watch this, we need to start with Terrifier 1. I feel like All Hallows Eve is a film that, if you like the Terrifier series, yeah, sure, go check it out. But if you're not even that big on the Terrifier series, All Hallows Eve ain't gonna win you over. The only thing I could say that has credit is, ooh, Art the Clown's first appearance. Woohoo. And, oh, it's on Halloween night, so Halloween decorations. Woo. Yeah. Woo. But I truly did enjoy his character, and David Howard Thornton is most certainly committed to the role. Even if he was playing more serious, he does a lot of stuff where I'm like, kudos to him, man, because god dang. God dang. And let's talk about the kills of the film. We've already alluded to it. They're pretty dadgum brutal and everything.
The camera in a lot of slasher films that we watch on this podcast will, like, look away. But not this film.
No, it shoves your face.
It's the opposite. Any moment that it could look away, it's like, no, where's a better angle to show this, you know?
Yeah, because it gets pretty brutal with a lot of the kills and everything. And, they certainly don't hold back with a lot of the kills and everything. But that being said, having seen it once and already knowing the kills, because it was like so, I mean, I guess traumatizing is not the right word, but like memorable for the wrong reasons.
For sure. Shocking.
Shocking. Because it was so shocking, I was like, okay, yep, I know this part's coming up here. It wasn't quite as bad the second time. It's just sort of like, kind of like, if you know kind of like where the jump scares are going to be or whatever, you're able to brace yourself and not be caught off guard. And so watching it, it's still pretty dadgum brutal, but there was moments where I had to just be like, man, I wonder what it was like shooting this scene, like being behind the camera.
Did that effect? Oh man, it must suck to be covered in that much blood makeup for that long.
Dude, that corn syrup must be really sticky. Like I just had to disassociate so much, and not gonna lie, there was one moment where I didn't disassociate, and then it started getting to me, and I'm like,
Yeah.
So then I had to turn my brain off, like, this is a movie. It's a movie. Just pull back. Because how difficult was it for you to kind of see the amount of gore? Given you've seen about 3 Saw films, which I would argue is maybe the goriest films we've seen on the podcast, maybe.
Well, I think this kind of gives it a run for its money. I think this is at Saw level. Like, if this was a tier list, I'd put this and Saw in the same, like, S tier of, like, just the point of the movie is evidently to be a body genre, to show body horror, to show guts and blood and sawing and those sorts of effects. I think this one focuses on it more than Saw. It doesn't focus on, like, in the same way. I mean, Saw is about, like, torture and, like, these impossible decisions and stuff, but, like, this is less about torture and more about just gruesomeness, you know? So it's, like, a little bit different in that aspect, but it's, I think it's at the same level, if not worse, even. But
yeah, I would argue it's worse, potentially, but maybe it's because they just really embellish in it. As opposed to even Saw, kind of.
I think if you I think if you went by minute and was like, how much screen time is horrific gore in this movie versus the Saw movies, I think this one probably has more.
Yes, at least it feels like more or whatever. Because even with Saw, if they ever did have a brutal trap, they sometimes would kind of pan away quickly. Like they would show the initial like, ooh, gore, and it's mostly the person's face going, ah.
And a lot of it is in like dark and grungy places with a weird green tint over it because it's the early 2000s, you know, and that's the Saw movie. And it's, you know, so it's, they show you stuff, but it's also like, you know, it's not showing everything. But this movie, I feel like, is like, all right, we got to make sure this is well lit so you can see it all, you know, like they're not trying to shy away from the, you know, horrific. They're trying to showcase it. That's why this is like a spectacle to me. But
yeah, I would most certainly agree with that. Aside from that, I'm trying to think. I mean, there's stuff we could talk about, just sort of like just production area or whatever. I feel like setting overall was fine, you know, being in like an abandoned building or whatever. I don't feel like it was like, it didn't hurt the film, but I don't think it was like oh man, I just love the setting. It's acceptable.
It's one of those things that I would put in the derivative category, like, you know, what would be a scary place for this movie? Oh, an abandoned warehouse that they goes into for some. Why does she go? We gotta take a piss, I guess. You know, like, I don't know. There are elements in this movie that I think were really phoned in, and I think that's one of them. There's nothing really inspiring about the environment. It's like they kind of tried to play it safe, but I think in a movie like this, like where you're going for the most horrific gore possible, why play it safe?
Yeah, I did like the pizza parlor though.
True.
Yeah, that did give me good vibes.
I wanted some pizza.
I did. I wanted pizza as well.
I'll buy the slice.
But yeah, aside from that, there's nothing else that I would say stands out too spectacular.
And those are the only, we've mentioned both scenes in the movie. Those are the only two places you will see.
Would you say that the effects were very good?
I think you can tell where they put their budget.
Yeah. All right, all the actors and everything else gets 1,000, and 34,000 goes towards special effects.
Well, I think, I mean, even specifically in scenes, I think there are some that were well funded and thought through.
Yes.
One in particular that they kept coming back to because that was the biggest spectacle of the spectacle movie.
I don't know.
And I think that one had was really good special effects. It was just hard to look at, you know.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm half and half on it. That was
I'm kind of
stupid.
split on that one.
Yeah, because...
Sorry, I didn't
No, you're good, you're
we
good.
both had moments.
Okay, yeah, you go, yeah.
So just to conclude, yes, I think some of the special effects were really well done. In fact, I'd say most of them probably are. Some of them you can tell it's an indie movie with some really bad fake blood and stuff, and yeah, it's whatever. So I think it's a little bit of a mixed bag.
Yes, I would agree. For $35,000 being the budget, I feel like the special effects are pretty good.
True.
Especially because I don't believe there's any use of like computer like special effects on the gore at the very least.
Nothing that stands out. Yeah, nothing that's like noticeable where you're like, oh yeah.
Yeah, like even some films we've watched on the horror podcast, it's like it literally looks like that sort of green screen blood spray that they add on or whatever. So that is one thing I give major props for, is the fact that the use of practical effects and how well a lot of them are is just going to make it age like a fine wine whenever it comes to...
I almost think it would age better if they just used older film cameras to film this so that it looked like it was an 80s movie or something. Because that's the level of like practical effects, and it like I think like that would make it feel more campy to me instead of... I don't know. It just feels a little hokey whenever everything's in high definition and you can see it. But I don't. Maybe that's just me.
No, and it's funny you mentioned that, because they have actually released at the very least 2, and I know they're going to release 3 on video cassette tape.
Oh yes,
yeah.
I think that's kind of the market, because that's the era of slasher. It feels like it's paying homage to, at least. It's just
yeah, very much so. Damien Leone has gone on record saying he loves slashers, and Halloween's his favorite slasher franchise, but he actually wants to do his own take on Friday the 13th or Texas Chainsaw... Oh, no, was it Texas Chainsaw Massacre? I think he likes it, but I think it was Friday the 13th for sure, and or Nightmare on Elm Street, maybe Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but I think it was more so the first two. Like, Damien Leone is very passionate about the genre as well, and I think it is pretty incredible that he was able to create this character that kind of feels more unique on its own, because I can't really say Art the Clown reminds me of any other horror icon too much, like even with him being a silent protagonist, because I thought it was an interesting choice. They kept him silent even whenever he's experiencing pain. He just kind of opens his mouth and nothing comes out. So I think that was definitely a good, interesting choice, and he is iconic looking. Like you look at him and you're like, okay, this is committed to memory. Like it's just immediately iconic. So
yeah, I do think there's an art, pun intended, I guess, to whenever you have when you're creating a monster, you're creating a villain in a horror movie, you gotta. I feel like there are specific rules that you have to set, and then also translate those really, really simply to the audience. I do think Art does that well. Like, I have a good idea of who Art is as a villain after watching one movie, which is good, because, yeah, again, like we talked about Friday the 13th or whatever, you don't really get that for Jason, as iconic as he is, until you're, like, 3 movies deep or whatever. But,
yeah. Aside from that, Bubby, any other things you want to talk about with this film, or... I like that. I like what you had to say there.
Yeah. Hold on, I'll tell you my favorite Art line from the movie. Here we go.
I will say it was funny while watching the movie, like hearing your laughs at certain parts, but then sometimes Art would do something and it's just like dead silent.
Because sometimes it just didn't hit for me. It was like they were trying to be goofy clown guy and not that it was goofy clown guy. You know what I mean? There are elements of this movie that it felt like they were trying to do something instead of they did something.
I just thought it was funny. Art would do something and it just like tore, especially the latter half of the film where you're like, all right, I'm out. I'm done. Yeah. So, Aaron, let us know what you rate Terrifier 1.
Terrifier 1.
Oh, damn.
Thought we were getting into it. You've got the mic. I mean, it feels like I'm in the studio.
I was dipping my toe in it. You were just doing like a swan dive.
I've been karaoke starved for a while. You gotta.
Oh yeah, we need to have that happen again.
I know. Anyway, Terrifier. Yeah, you guys have heard. I feel like I've been pretty vocal about how I feel about all these elements, so we'll keep this summary section short. This is a 4 out of 10 experience for the old Aaron. Yeah, and it's sad to say that because I think there are certain elements that are definitely in that 8, 9, 10 threshold. I really like the main character. I really like, certain elements of this film, but so much of it I did not like. So much of it, even that I think they were focusing on, I did not think they nailed, and so much of it, that was missing, I felt its absence. So, with all that in mind, yeah, it's about a 4. It would have been a 3 without Goth Girl protagonist. But Goth Girl protagonist always gives you 1 point. That's free.
Absolutely.
It could just be a picture. It could be a JPEG of a Goth Girl for an hour and a half. And that's not a 0 out of 10. That's at least a 1 out of 10 for me. So
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant observation that I couldn't disagree with. That needs to be in film books.
I know. just so you guys know.
Put that in film school. If you have a goth girl as a lead
It works.
protagonist, you're safe.
Or even, it doesn't have to be lead. Just even like a character that's there for at least 30 minutes of screen time. Like,
Yeah, it can't just be like
it could be a
just,
supporting
oh,
role.
whatever,
Yeah,
and it shows up like that. That's half-assing it.
She's just got to be in frame somewhere for a significant chunk of the movie.
Yes, absolutely, wholeheartedly agree with that. But yeah, it's interesting because first time I watched it, I actually, and I will let you know, the first rating I have does not reflect my current rating, but the first time I watched it, I was like, I give it a 6 out of 10, just because I did feel like it was fresh, unique. I did love the main character of the film and everything. Art the Clown I thought was funny or whatever, and while there's definitely moments that I do like, watching it a second time, like, because if I'm being honest, I like the Terrifier series, but it's not for the gore and guts. It's just for the goofs and gaffs.
Oh, yeah.
Which
So that's only a sliver of the pie left.
exactly that's the problem I have, because people have asked me, they're like, well, you like Terrifier, like, would you recommend it? And I'm like,
I get that. There's
Yeah.
so many movies that I like, but it's like, well, I wouldn't say it's a good movie. I wouldn't recommend it.
yeah, so like, because truly, like, if the Terrifier series had no gore whatsoever, I'd be happy, but I am understanding that's why it has gained a lot of cultural phenomenon, because it's like the equivalent, like, oh, bro, have you seen this? It's crazy, bro. And,
Yeah.
Kudos to them. I don't feel like they're doing anything wrong by doing that, where
No.
I'm like,
It's a niche that they're
I feel like
tackling,
Terrifier would be equally successful if there's no gore. I'm not stupid.
Right.
I'm not stupid. I know that's like the big main pull. But it's like, for me, I just really get attached to David Howard Thornton just goofing around. And like, if you're ever bored, Aaron, or anyone in the audience, I implore you to look up David Howard Thornton at conventions, because obviously he can't do horrific stuff and murder people in public, so he has to rely solely on goofs and gaffs, and it's phenomenal. It's terrific, and you can definitely tell he especially loves playing the character and everything. Because I guess initially he was going to be a teacher, but as soon as he was like teaching, he realized he enjoyed entertaining the students more. Like if he read them yes, he did enjoy.
He's just like, I want to kill these kids.
He learned that he enjoyed reading stories and doing different voices, and the students gravitated more towards that than actually learning, because they enjoyed his performance. And he was like, I guess, a 4th generation of his parents and his grandparents being teachers, so it was definitely a divide from him, and so this is just what launched his career and what he'll be known for. And so it's very much, I have respect for it as a film and what it's done for the franchise, but as an actual sitting down and watching the film itself, it does shave down a little bit, because it is a little less enjoyable. I feel like comfortably placing this at a 5.5 or maybe a 5 there, because there's definitely slivers of like stuff I enjoy. It's kind of like Devil's Rejects. That film has some slivers that I'm like, I love this part.
Yeah,
I quote it, I say it all the time, but then you have to watch the rest of the film where I'm just like, oh man, this is just not enjoyable. So like, that's why I rated probably like 5 or 5.5 out of 10. Like, if I had to keep the 6, it's like, yeah, sure, fine, I guess you could move it up to a 6, but comfortably probably just, once again, 5.5 territory around there for me.
Sure.
It was slightly less enjoyable the second time round, even though it was more palatable, especially after watching the sequel.
Oh no, I'm
yeah.
sure it just gets worse.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, very much so. But yeah, whenever it comes to recommending the film, I feel like it stands out pretty clear. Like, if you just want to see something blatantly gory and violent, yeah, you're probably going to get a kick out of this. If you don't like that, the goofs and gaffs, I feel like, is only going to cater to a smaller audience, like a fraction of the audience. But I feel like if you love goofs and gaffs and gore, like, you're set. You'll probably enjoy this one decently well. You could watch it on Amazon Prime and everything. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it says a lot that, like, with this film or whatever, I was like, do I want to own this film yet? No, just go watch it on Prime, dude.
Yeah.
It's fine. So yeah, let that be your better sense of judgment. As if we haven't warned you enough, it is very brutal.
Yeah.
So if you're not into gore, don't watch
I'd
it.
say Saw was a good metric. Like, if I asked, someone was like, give me some horror movie recs, and I was like, what do you like? And they were like, I love Saw. Then I'd be like, yeah, check out Terrifier. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
But, like, barring that, like, if you can't, not only if you can't stomach Saw, but, like, if you don't enjoy that kind of thing, then just mildly, then you're not gonna like this film.
No, just watch, like, I'm sure there's probably a YouTube compilation of Art the Clown, like, messing around. And
Yeah.
you could maybe get enjoyment out of that.
Right.
Because there's no plot, so, you know, it's all good. Yeah, I don't have anything else to say. We're going to spoil this film now.
Yeah.
Aaron, please talk about the first spoiler you want to talk about.
Sure. I mean, let's do this alone. Let's do it. This is a chronological one. There's no plot, so I feel like we should, I don't know, go in order. Maybe if there's no plot, that means we can go in any order. Then.
Absolutely.
Oh man. Well, if we can go in any order, then I want to spoil the thing that really ruins the whole movie for me. Yes, they killed the one character I wanted to
Yes.
watch.
It's so bad because I forgot that she died, because, like, whenever her sister comes save her, I was thinking, oh, it's her sister
Right.
that dies, but
because she didn't really die. She just gets horribly disformed or whatever. But yeah.
Yes. But yeah, that was a major fall, but given the fate of her sister, I think she got out easier.
I mean, she's alive enough to go murder a reporter or whatever. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just essentially they took her out of the film, like, by that point, and that was halfway through the film. And, like, if the film wrapped up in the next 10-15 minutes after that, it would have been totally fine, because that was like a climactic moment. But no, there was still like another half of the movie, and I had to watch just clown shenanigans with the sister that I don't care about, but I care about the goth girl.
Yeah, it was definitely sad to see her die, even though she did unfortunately have probably the funniest death of the film.
Yeah, with the gun. Yeah, that's also the thing that I was mentioning that I could not mention, but I will mention this in spoilers, is, yeah, Art's goof and gas. I do appreciate that he is a villain that is willing to just shoot somebody instead of chasing them around with the scalpel the whole time or whatever. He's like, all right, I know when I'm getting beat with a 2x4, this one is time to pull out the gun.
Yeah, like, that whole scene, it's heartbreaking, because it's like, man, I just wanted to, like, have this be my ride or die throughout the film or whatever. I liked her. She did a good job acting. You know, she was a likable protagonist, you know.
Yeah.
Our goth girl, you know.
And she's one of the sane people in the film, too. She actually responds to dangerous situations appropriately, you know. And then, you know, she was on her last backed into a corner fighting back, and she was winning. And I was like, shit, you know.
Yeah, and it was, like, realistic, too, because it didn't feel like some films where it's like, what are you doing? Get out of there. Because it's like, after everything she's seen, she's like, I am fucking done with you. Right. I am ending you right now.
After she tries to get out multiple times and can't, and then is like, all right, it's time to fight back. Yeah.
Yeah, and, like, doing that or whatever, because every time she's run away, he's found her. So she's like, no, we're finishing this right now. And as he's, like, basically beating the shit out of Art with a 2x4 and, like, screaming, I'm like, this genuinely does feel like a badass moment. It doesn't feel like a, ooh, look at her be a badass.
Because it's run, hide, fight. You know, that's what you're supposed to do. Run if you can. If you can't run, hide. If you can't hide, fight. And we went through all those steps in the movie, and you know, she was coming out on top. I like that Art is like more or less human. I mean, at the end of the movie, you know, he's not, but like at least for most of the movie, he's perceived as like just actually a guy in a costume that you can beat the shit out of, you know.
And I do like that he's like stammering, and then there's no hint he has a gun on him, mind you. So whenever he like pulls down, grabs a gun, and shoots her, it's funny, as all get out. Because
it's hilarious because you don't see that in this genre of movie, but it's what makes the most sense.
But I like how, like, he shoots her leg or whatever, falls over, and then proceeds to shoot her, and then realizes he runs out of bullets. She's still alive and everything. He goes back all the way to, like, his little trash bag where he carries all his tools, which I don't know what brand of trash bag he's carrying, but that has to be some, like, hefty brand, especially with all those sharp objects he has. And then he gets like a new clip, and he comes back and then just repeatedly shoots her again till he's out of the clip.
Show him shoot her over and over. It's just, I feel like this movie is supposed to, like, they're just trying to be sadistic, you know, like to the audience. They're like, we know you like this character, so like they keep giving her moments where it's like she could get away, she could live or whatever, and then it's like, nope, shoot with the gun. Oh, he's out of bullets, she's gonna crawl away now. Oh no, he does come back with the magazine and just kills her. You know, it's like they're like, oh, you like this thing, we're gonna take it from you.
Yeah, they do. They very much do enjoy that aspect. So it was most certainly sad, especially because this happens like, I want to say like 2/3 of through the film or something like that.
It feels like halfway, but I think that's just because everything after it is slower because I'm not interested in anything that's left alive.
For sure. So it was definitely sad to see Tara taken out what felt like too soon, especially because I was enjoying her performance and enjoying the character and everything.
Yeah, and it's the main character, so the expectation is that they make it to the end of the film, you know what I mean? And I understand that they took a risk by trying to define that expectation, but I felt like it landed flat because we already took out the other character that you developed that I cared about, the blonde, Dawn, so it's like no Tara, no Dawn. What, I'm supposed to sit around and wait for the sister, or like, I don't know.
Yeah, because like, I know they do that in some films, like even on some films we've watched for the podcast, but in comparison, it works because there are, it feels like better for the story, and there's still enough meat on the bone that even if you get like a brand new protagonist halfway through the film you're focusing on, it ends up working out better because there's a lot of other stuff, but unfortunately, that was one of the juicy bits there, and then what's left is not a lot. Like, what is there left? Art the Clown.
Right.
That's it.
These are all reasons you have narratives, you have plots, you know what I mean? Where it's like, okay, because that way, whenever that happens to you, and you're like, you can then process it in the next scene where it's the two people in college sitting on the bench, and they're like, whatever happened to Emily? I don't know. Anyway, blah, blah. You know, and then one of them is going to get killed. And it's some characters you've already met before, you know what I mean? Like, it's, you know, like, that makes sense. Or if you do it like a cold open, like they do in Scream, that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, but the first characters you see and you develop, especially in a movie like this where you don't have that plot to fall back on. You don't have a whole big cast of characters. You don't have a Scooby-Doo ass group of people that are walking through this place. It's just little people that they introduce here and there purely for the purpose of killing. The only two people that you have been like conditioned to care about die halfway through the movie. So like, sure, it subverts expectations, but does it like work for the quality of the movie? I would say no. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a difference between that and like, spoiler alert, when they kill Ned Stark or whatever after you watch him for a season, because it's like, oh fuck, but then you got to know what happens to Sansa and Joffrey and Arya and blah blah blah, because we've already grafted, and then you're dealing with the aftermath of that or whatever, which I know it's a TV series, it's not a movie, it's not quite the same thing. But, movies will do that where it's like suddenly they kill character that you cared about, but then like, you know, the repercussions around that become what's interesting, or the other characters you cared about become interesting because you didn't expect that one to die so soon, but that doesn't mean these other characters aren't going to whatever. But this one is just, there's nothing else there for me besides the sister that's idly looking for them and the guy that's mopping the floor upstairs to spraying for bugs or whatever. It's like, I don't care about the crazy lady with the porcelain baby. These are all characters that were introduced with nothing because there's no plot to fuel them, and there's no character besides the stereotype And I at least like the stereotype of bimbo and goth, so I wanted those to stick around.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily that attached to the stereotype of a crazy homeless woman and pest control.
Yeah, and yeah, because I do think like killing your main character is risky, but if you have something to fill the void, you're good. But if you don't, you're screwed.
Right.
And I feel like this is a situation that sure they had some stuff to fill the void with, but it wasn't enough, and overall you're just kind of like, it just kind of sucks a little bit of the fun. So, while I don't know, and it's not even the fact of like, you know, oh, I need like the final girl to like escape or whatever,
No.
but it is. I feel like you have the shock of it, but is the shock worth sacrificing the substance that's left over?
Absolutely.
And in this case, no.
Yeah,
most certainly not.
What you're doing is I feel like whenever you're, especially when you're operating on a movie with very little substance, with very little plot, narrative, you're juggling a limited number of pins, and one of those is your characters, and you got to be careful, because like then it's not as exciting to watch the clown juggle 2 pins. You know what I mean?
That's
like,
true.
Yeah, you know, it's I just you're at you've limited your resources, so you got to really make them count, and then you're just like, all right, here's the characters people care about. We're gonna get rid of them to like, I don't know. I'm reading into intent when I say to subvert expectations. I don't know exactly what their intent was to kill this girl right away, but it was like it was after a long chase. They chased her for a long time. They killed. It wasn't like sudden. It wasn't unexpected.
Yeah.
It was just it happened, and then it's like, oh yeah, we have to finish the movie.
Yes, like they're like, oh, okay, still gotta wrap it up somehow and everything, because as it's teased at the beginning, you know, we see like the TV where like the TV host is interviewing like a survivor of Art the Clown, and you see like brief glimpses, so we know that somebody survives from Art the Clown.
We know it's exactly one too, because she said you're the sole survivor or whatever.
And then like, you know, then it shows like the TV like dressing room or whatever, like the TV hosts get attacked by Victoria and everything, and it's definitely like, okay, she's just kind of mentally crazy and everything. And so did you see where the film was going with that first opening bit versus how the film like concluded with that?
I mean, yes and no. I mean, I didn't know exactly who the character was. Like you know, from the beginning, which one ends up being that person. I would have guessed it was the main character. So I think there's a big element of yes, because as soon as we got into the warehouse and started killing people, that's all the movie was. So I was like, okay, one person makes it out, and that was the interview person.
Yeah,
You
and
know.
I don't know. It wasn't a big payoff though, like of like, oh, I get it, because I feel the same way where it's just like,
and I can't tell if they were trying to set up a big payoff or what, but I don't know. I was also I'm a little taken away from certain elements of this film that seem derivative, and one of them is just like what people think is creepy and scary. One of them is just like facial deformities, you know, like like people that are physically disabled are scary, and clowns are scary, and abandoned warehouses scary. And it's like, we know what scary is, and it's like, I don't know. It's like you're an alien that looked at what scary was in American culture and was like, let me pull out these things, you know. But I don't know.
Yeah.
The mental illness is the other thing that bothered me. Whenever they're like, this person's creepy because they're homeless and insane, and it's like, yeah, there's like 5 of those people on my block, so like,
yeah, like Big Whoop want to fight about it. Yeah,
it's okay.
Yeah, and they almost glamorize it because I thought she was pretty, the prettiest homeless woman ever perceived in film.
It's like, well, it's Hollywood ugly standards. They're like, it's a gorgeous 10 out of 10 woman with glasses on or something, you know.
Yeah,
she's ugly, you know. But yeah, I mean, I just expect that from movies now.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so rip in peace, Tara and everything. Trying to think about what else to talk about. I guess probably not surprising to you, there is one kill that people talk about the most with this film.
We gotta talk about it.
Yeah, and it's unfortunately with the blondie and everything.
Rip
Dawn.
Dawn.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Archer did. Yeah, because that scene, basically, for those unaware, whenever one of the many times that Tara is caught, she wakes up and she's duct taped to the chair and everything, and Art's like screwing with her, like trying to act like he's going to hit her with something or cut her open or whatever.
With a hammer.
And then like there's this tarp that's hanging right in front of her, like a few feet out. And whenever Art goes over there and pulls down the tarp, it's Dawn and everything hanging upside down, wearing nothing but a pair of panties and everything, upside down, and holding a hacksaw.
Yeah.
Now, I was not prepared for him just to go right down the middle, and he and it doesn't show close up genitalia or whatever, but he does make sure to rip off the fabric because he can't cut through like a pair of that, and it just proceeds to hack right down the middle. I am not joking. The first time I saw this, I was like literally just squirming like nobody's business. Like it just got to me, from the rust of the blade to how dull it was, and just right down the middle, right in the crevice and everything else. Even talking about it now, like major disassociation of like, yep, there's the dummy that they hung up there and they're just cutting.
Oh, and they show as much. I mean, like they get half cheek shots in there all the time because they're trying to get as close to the camera's edge, as close to the genitalia as they can. Like they want to show you as much as possible, but they go back to that prosthetic, whatever that prop that they have of her sawed almost all the way down.
Yes.
Over and over and over again.
Yeah, because were you prepared for what was going to happen?
I mean, obviously when the tarp comes down and you see her, I'm like, all right, she's going to get cut in half. I didn't quite expect it to start, vag first cutting.
Yes. Yeah.
to really soak that in. It's so weird because this movie, like, it definitely caters to that element of like the sadistic enjoyment of violence against women. Like it definitely leans into that. But like there's no like sexual assault, but it's like, victimizing women. You can tell there's like an element of this film is getting off on that. That also makes me uncomfortable, but like I get, I'm not going to yuck someone else's yum, but that particular yum is hard for me to watch without thinking yuck.
Yeah, it was really difficult, and even now, it was still difficult to watch, but because I was able to disassociate, I was just like, all right, this is happening, he's just cutting her in half. Good effects. Yup. But that was like by far the one thing I remembered about this film.
Oh yeah, that's what I want you to remember, and there's a reason that they go back to that shot over and over and over. I think part of it is because that's probably where most of the budget went to, but the other part is, or at least the special effects budget. But yeah. I mean, the other part is because it is just. It's almost like they had this scene in mind, and they were like, this is the scene, and we're going to build the rest around it. Like, somehow this blonde girl ends up naked, upside down, and chained in a warehouse with her friend watching her get cut.
Yeah, because, like, the kills of the film, that's obviously the identity of Terrifier, and that one, by far, was the worst one that I experienced there. But there's definitely quite a few deaths and everything. I do like right before he does start killing people and everything, he makes sure a shit goes down at the pizza parlor.
A lot of shit. Yeah, shit goes everywhere.
Yeah, for sure.
He does a Dumb and Dumber too moment.
Yes, for sure, and just like smearing it everywhere on the walls, which
everywhere.
Yeah, and fortunately you don't see him do it. You just see him like after he goes to grab some change on a table and go to like a little like toy dispenser vending machine and pulls out a little ring to present Tara and everything. He goes to the back and you don't know what happens, and then of course you have like stereotypical Italian guy like, hey, that guy causing a problem for you.
I'll get rid of him for you.
Yeah, and he goes to the back and he's like, oh, what the fuck is this? Get the fuck out of here, you freak.
Yeah.
And you don't know what he did back there or whatever. And they even make a joke about it and just being like, I bet he jizzed everywhere. He had a hard-on for you.
You jerking it, dude. And she was like, oh, stop.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm going to keep going.
It's like, I'm surprised he just didn't whip it out right there. At least he has some courtesy or whatever.
Yeah.
And then later on shows like the worker having to clean it everywhere, and he's like written art.
Bloody shit everywhere.
Yeah, just pure, just fecal matter, just everywhere. And I was just like, okay, yeah, that was something else.
That's
there.
really like the first thing you see from him too, of like, this is the horrific deed he's done, you know, because before this he's just kind of smiling creepily and disappearing or whatever, you know, and waving at people and you know, being generally creepy presence. But that's the first like active horror you see, and it's just him pooping everywhere. I don't know.
Yeah, because like, you know, he appears for the first time in front of Tara and Dawn whenever they're trying to get into the car, and it's like, okay, you're too drunk, let's go eat some pizza, try to sober up a bit.
Right.
And so to go to the pizza parlor, and then wouldn't you know it, Art the Clown follows them there and walks in, and he sits down and he's smiling at Tara and everything, just doing that. And
because Dawn specifically, she was like, that's a creepy clown guy, let's get out of here. And Dawn was like, hey, this girl likes you, she wants to give your number.
Yeah.
So like,
terrible friend.
This whole thing happened, I mean, because of Art, but secondarily because dumb drunk girl.
Very, very true. But I do like the scene at the pizza parlor with Art just merely sitting there just looking at them. I do find that memorable and well acted, and I do like how Dawn's like, oh my god, like, get off yourself, he's not bad, he's just some weird dude in a costume, and decides to like just mess around with him, like mess ahead, take selfies with him or whatever. And yeah, like I said, he just continues to stare until he's kicked out or whatever. But I had to mention that one scene because especially Tara's like uncomfortable factor, I have felt the same feeling she had before. Not with a clown per se, but with just some people where I'm like, I do not want to be here right now.
Right, and just being like, yeah, like, let's go, you know.
But yeah, and then after shit goes down and they decide to leave or whatever, the poor pizza parlor workers never stood a chance, because you have like the boss is missing, and like the employees like, you know, I'm going to put in my resignation after this disgusting, I shouldn't be paid for this.
Make the guy who handles the food clean all the shit up.
yeah, what's the matter with you? And he goes out and then sees that his boss's head has been cut off with eyes and mouth, or eyes and nose lit like a jack-o'-lantern, which I was like, how did you do that?
Right, they don't really show the candle or anything. It's just there's just kind of a flame in there.
But yeah, and so then he starts getting attacked, and it's like, for the most part, the gore that you do see Art do and everything is just sort of just like normal hack and slash stuff you'd be used to, but they certainly love going for the eyes in the film. Like,
yeah, he puts his thumbs in people's eyes a lot.
And then it even happened earlier in the film with the TV host whenever Victoria kills her, shoving her thumbs in her eyes, and I was like, why the eyes?
Well, yeah, that's the point. Yeah, I think every gore scene is they're trying to make it the most difficult to watch thing you can.
Yeah, in all honesty, I thought there was going to be like a slicer kill, because there's like that meat slicer back there. Yeah. And so that's the one thing where I was like, okay, thank goodness Terrifier didn't go that far. Not that I just don't think they even thought about it, or they didn't have a good idea for it. But yeah, so that was like one of the more mundane kills, surprisingly, amongst everything.
It's just to show his brutality, I guess, because he just kind of hacks him over and over and over.
And there's really not a kill for a long time while, because basically both the girls get stranded because someone slashed a hole in their tire and everything.
I did love Dawn's line, because I have known people like this, where she's like, she's like, it was something about the tire being flat, and she's like, why does this always happen to me? And I was like, yeah, the most obnoxious bitch annoyed somebody and they slashed her tire, and then she's like, why does this happen to me?
It's so good.
It's because of you, actually.
But I do love how quick the radio is to be like, yeah, there's a double homicide at a pizza parlor, guy in a clown outfit.
Yeah, the pop music radio or whatever she's listening to is like, all right, careful folks, because there's a guy that's murdering people.
I was like, that is efficient and quick, let me tell you what. Whenever Tara's inside or whatever, and like I said, I can't underestimate this enough. I just enjoyed seeing Tara respond to stuff, like literally going into the building or whatever, and it's like, I was about to bomb the place here. What? It's like fumigate, you know, getting rid of pests. It's like, oh, wait, you mean like cockroaches? Nah, rats. And so whenever he ends up in the bathroom, he's like, yep, it's all clear. And then she's like, well, what if a rat pops up in a toilet? He's like, well, you better be quick.
Yeah.
And just Tara having the most realistic, like, reactions about being in this scenario.
Do you think it was important for her to be a goth girl, too?
Yes.
If there's one type of, you know, gorgeous young woman that I would think would probably just go ahead and say, whatever, I'll piss in this rat-infested, disgusting dump anyways. It's probably a goth girl. She's just like,
They're just built different.
Just built different.
And then I do love the timing of Dawn realizing that Art the Clown is fitting the description of the guy Dumble Homicide is. So she's like, oh my god. And then the door opens. She's like, oh my gosh, Tara, you're not going to believe it. And of course, it's Art the Clown and everything. Yeah. And then... I
wish you guys know she wouldn't lock the doors after hearing that.
Taken away. And like I said, Tara's wandering through, gets lost in the building, runs into the homeless person who's like, oh, you're the new tenant. Ooh, look at my baby. And she's like, yeah, I got to go talk to the landlord. And she's like, all right.
And she's like, she makes up a really elaborate lie instead of just being like, oh, well, excuse me a moment. She goes, oh, excuse me a moment. I've got to go talk to the landlord because the first of the rent's due and I don't want to be late or something. And it's like, why did you make this elaborate lie up for a mental illness one? But it's so she could say some weird line where she was like, punctuality is the death of reason or something. And
it's the thief of time.
That's it. I was like, okay, like, I don't know what that was supposed to be about. They just wanted to make her be crazy.
Yeah, exactly. You should take a note from Texas Chainsaw Massacre 4. You just quote things, and that means you're crazy.
Yeah.
But I do like that whenever Tara is trying to finally gets to the entrance and just sees Art the Clown covered in blood and just smiling, and it's like frozen still, and she's like, oh god, like what do I do? It's like they're both frozen. Obviously, Art's taunting her, but she's like frozen in fear. And then once he starts to lunge at her, she's like, nope. Starts noping and running out of there. And they do have a lot of cat and mouse sort of situations.
Runs, then she hides, then she fights.
Yep. And one of the things that did get me, which is as simple as it is whenever she's hiding amongst the cars or whatever, Art the Clown's tracking her down, finally gets her and then starts stabbing her leg with a scalpel and everything. Yeah. That was the part that I forgot that this was a movie. And so then seeing her get stabbed, and I was like, oh man. And it was like a simple thing too. It really wasn't that gory comparison to everything else, but it was like man, it's a movie. Yeah. And so she manages to kick and get away. And fortunately, like I said earlier, they had called his sister before she went into the building to pick her up, pick her and Dawn up. And again, the sister's not doing anything. She's just chilling in her dorm. And she only goes because like her roommate comes in, starts making out with the boyfriend. It's like, I need to stretch my legs. Yeah. And it's like, oh, you're the best. And so she drives all the way there. Yeah. And like I said, there's just a lot of cat and mouse chase and everything else.
Yeah, there's a lot of like funny, dumb horror movie editing too. I would say, like whenever she's under the cars looking at his feet, and then just like, of course, the feet walk off the screen to the left, but the camera doesn't pan there. She's just like, oh, well, he's gone. And then he appears behind her with the... I don't know. There's a lot of dumb stuff like that.
Horror tropes and stuff like
people
that.
People locking themselves in the little closet. And they'll be like, he must be gone now.
And of course, whenever she's trying to call for help, Mike the Exterminator is like listening, smoking his cig.
Yeah, just down the hall with his... Of course, he turns right after she gets yoinked away.
Yeah, by Art and like sedated by him with his like syringe and everything. And that's whenever you get the magnificent cutting a woman in half trick,
which was, I mean, well executed. You know that subreddit, awful taste but great execution.
Yeah,
I wouldn't quite put it there, but it does remind me. It's gruesome taste, but great execution.
But yeah, and then that's whenever Tara like manages to like get away after hitting him, and then as she gets up and she's still being chased by him, that's whenever she finds the 2x4. She's like, all right, I'm going to wreck it, and starts like whacking him, and then unfortunately it's taken out by gunshots, multiple gunshots.
Guns are OP, man.
I love in the midst of it or whatever, I guess the crazy woman has like enough sanity to acknowledge a killer clown or whatever. which maybe it was an act the entire time she's actually saying.
She like it's her stupid shit
Yeah.
because like earlier whenever she hears that person dying, she's like, sounds like somebody wasn't able to negotiate rent or something, or like I don't know. She makes some comment that makes her seem like this is something that she's used to, is the clown of this building murdering people. But
Yeah, and so then, like, later in the film or whatever, the homeless person tries to talk with Mike, and Mike's like, get off me, crazy lady. Ugh.
she's like, they're murdering people downstairs.
Here's like a dead body. Yeah, and so it just kind of was a weird scene to interject or whatever, just to have that kind of brief moment of sanity. And then she goes to try to look for her baby doll. It's gone, and then she manages to wander down a hallway, and wouldn't you know it, finds Art the Clown cradling the baby. And then there's like this one scene that I laughed hysterically the first time, not as much the second time, but basically she tries like sympathizing with him, like, have you no kindness in your heart,
Right,
somewhere deep down?
Spare my child, you know.
And so then it's like her like cradling the side of his face, and then Art leans in, sucking his thumb, resting against her. It was just like a what is going on sort of scenario.
Yeah, it was odd, and I do think that was one of the. It was a little bit of a scarier moment in the film, just because nothing did happen, you know.
Yeah.
I do feel like there are spots when they kind of know some horror shit, where it's like, yeah, sometimes it's better to just have a really suspenseful moment like that, and then nothing happens, you know.
Yeah.
So that the next time it's scarier. But.
Yeah, and so then whenever Victoria shows up to the building or whatever, trying to call for help, Art has the phone and says like, "Oh, Tara's sick in the back or whatever," and she goes to the back or whatever, and as she gets into the building or whatever, she sees obviously Don's body split in half, starts freaking out, being like, "Oh my god!" And then whenever she's wondering, she goes down this one area, thinks she sees Tara's body as like
she
shaking.
Goes down there, I really don't understand still.
Horror logic, I guess.
Going outside and calling the police, yeah.
And then wouldn't you know it, so it looks like, you know, a woman naked underneath a blanket, but it turns out Art scalped the top of the homeless woman's head and the front of her chest, and is wearing nothing but the top of her head, as well as like the breast and some of the skin stomach.
Okay, I thought that was just prosthetic, but it was supposed to be her.
Yeah, that's because it cuts over and you look at her chest and it's like complete flesh there. So you literally like skinned the front of her chest, and it's just walking around naked, like prancing about with his like skinny, lanky body.
Because they didn't quite hit all of the other like marginalized populations to make scary, so they had to hit trans people too.
Oh my god!
Isn't it creepy whenever men cross dress? That's an old horror trope.
A penis and a set of breasts.
Weird. Weird people. Weird people are scary.
Oh my god. I didn't even think of that.
Physical deformities, mental illness, transsexuality. That's the triforce of being a weird horror movie villain.
Nintendo, make that. Oh my god. And I do think they prance Art around a little too long with it.
Yeah, they're like trying to milk this thing that like I don't find scary or creepy, or even, I mean, it's like, it's definitely weird, but like not in like a good way. It's just like, all right, like let's get to the next part.
Yeah, and of course Victoria's hiding in a closet, and they have the shot where it's like through like a little hole in the door, and Art tries to break through until he hears like one of the other exterminators that Mike tried to call before he was taken out by a hammer shows up and is trying to get in. And so Art's like, ooh, more people I get to screw around with. And while I think the acting for the most part was pretty evenly well acted overall, no shade towards Michael Levy, but he was definitely the weakest performer, because it literally felt like a guy reading the line. He was the guy who's like, come on, Mike, this isn't funny, man. I'm going to leave. Yeah. And then he's like, oh, I got the keys. And I think it's just a combination of acting and what his character was given, because one of the things that kills me is whenever he enters a building and he sees like a little trail, and he's like a Looney Tunes character. Like, doom,
hyper focused on the bloody footprint, not looking anywhere else in the room.
Yeah, and then he looks at the baby doll and he's just laughing at it randomly, and then Art comes up and stabs him in the head, and even his death thing where he's like, "Ooh."
Yeah, stabs him in the head and then like cuts his throat and then cuts his whole head off, you know?
Yeah, like
I don't
prosthetic wise, yeah, very well executed, but just everything else, I was like, it's the last third of the film that just kind of sandbags. Unfortunately, it's after the death of Tara as well. It's just like,
because even this, it's like this guy shows up after Tara's death, after Dawn's death. It's like, we know you're just fodder to be killed. I don't care about him. And then I watch him get killed, and like I felt nothing watching that.
Yeah, it really was just pretty dadgum awful. And you have that death and he kicks the head or whatever, and then you see Victoria trying to run and escape, and she come across her sister Tara, who's wrapped in lights and in like a circus sign, and she has time to mourn, which, I mean, definitely the idea of like an older sister seeing like a younger sister be murdered and everything is really sad and everything else like that. But it's only serving as a window for Art to use his like weapon flail that has like scissors, scalpels tied on string to its stick.
Yeah.
And everything just to hit her before Mike comes in and manages to knock out Art as they run to like a little safe room or whatever, and he calls 911. And, he's like going through the emergencies, and she's, the operator's like, "Oh, you just need to stay there." And he's like hell we will. She needs a hospital or whatever. And I'm like, on the one hand, yeah, I get it. But at the same point, like, do you really think you knocked him out? It's sort of like the 50-50 thing. Like, I could see why he would get up and try to leave and everything else.
Yeah.
But at the same point, it's like, what did you just say? And like, because those doors look pretty dadgum sturdy and everything.
Right. It's also like, this is the one guy that would know how to get out of this building too. Like, he's the one with the keys. He's the one that locked up this place, I presume, to fumigate it. Like, I don't know. I also just don't buy that they're stuck anymore. But
yes, exactly. And so that's kind of was the unfortunate part, because him trying to look for something to break through the locks, it's like, couldn't you go through a way that is unlocked or something?
Yeah.
Or unless Art locked all the doors. And
I don't know. He's already betrayed, like, the reason he has for being here, which was that he was going to pest bomb the building or whatever. Because, like, he's been here for, like, an hour now while people are getting killed. He's just kind of walking around spraying the upstairs with, like, going line by line. I'm like, if you're going to bomb this whole building, you're fumigating the whole building, dog. Like, you don't need to go around spraying little corners. I don't know. Maybe I'm not a pest control professional, but I'm just like, he seems like he's just dawdling around while also being oblivious to everything. Like, they just needed his character to do that. And I'm just like, by this point in the film, not buying it. Get out of here. No. He calls 911 on some old weird landline that's conveniently in this room, but he didn't call 911 in the first place. Whenever he was trying to get the fuck out of this building, he called his manager to come and get murdered. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Like, I don't know. It's like my patience for horror movie logic is running thin by this point.
Yes, and there's no goth girl to help stave it.
Yeah, I will buy a lot of things if you reward me with goth girl in my vision.
You're like the Mike Wazowski meme where it's like, where's the goth girl?
Where is she?
Yeah, I'm doing that.
Well, that's all you give me, though. I mean, like, I wouldn't be this rabid about it, although,
you took away my favorite thing.
I know. It's like if Zootopia killed Judy Hopps halfway through the movie, I'd be like, why am I watching this?
Yeah, there's no point.
Why am I? I don't. You think I care about cops? No, like, no. I want Judy Hopps.
Yeah. Oh my god.
I'm here for rabbit ass. This movie doesn't give me a plot to care about. I don't really care about the villain that much. I don't care about any of the remaining survivors. I kind of cared about Blonde Girl, and I cared about Goth Girl, and they killed them both in the same scene. So
yeah, that's true. One little tidbit that I don't know where to shoehorn this, but talking about the Exterminator, I know they tried to make the rats scary, and I know it's just me, but I just thought they were so dadgum cute. Yeah, it was just like,
if I saw
rats.
The rats seemed like a helpful little... I saw those rats all around a big thing of gas. I was like, she's going to burn down this building. But no, that didn't happen. I would have done that, at least. Man, if I'm going to get cornered and I can take you guys out and all the rats with me, bro. At least carry around that can of gas.
I know, right? Yeah, no big explosion this time round. But
I feel like they were teasing me with that.
yeah, for
Why
sure.
would you show me a red gas can that says flammable on it or whatever, and then no gas, no explosion, not even a hint at it? She's just like, there are rats over there, so I'm not gonna worry about it.
And then we get to the end of, unfortunately, Mike the Exterminator, who is exterminated by being curb stomped by Art the Clown.
She just steps on his face over it. Like, at this point, it's just like the excessive nature of the violence is not even shocking to me anymore. Like, at this point in the film, it's just like boring.
That's bad. That's bad if you just find it boring and you lose the shock of it.
It's just like, I don't even want to watch this. Like, yeah, I get it. Like, it's just like so ridiculous. Like, you want to see a good curb stomp, go watch American History X or whatever that movie is, where they have a bite, because they build it up, they suspense, they know what makes things horrifying. This one is all about the visual and like the special effects, and it's not about building up what makes that terrifying and gruesome. It's just like, yeah, you're stepping on the guy's head, and it's some fake corn syrup that's splosion out. Like, whatever. Let's move on.
Yeah, because then it focuses on Victoria managing to break the lock as she like takes out Art's eye or whatever, and then she doesn't know where to go because she's injured, so she can't run fast at all. Doesn't have car keys, so she's like, I guess I'll hide in the keep out section. And so then Art tries to grab her and like manages to pull out some of her hair. And then as he's like trying to wriggle in, she's like, "Stop, go away." And then like
reaches in with the horn.
I know, it was so funny because when hiding that scene, funny, it's not just the horn squeezing out and just him honking at it as she's crying or whatever, but your lack of laughing, it was like the equivalent of like, I'm done.
That's just where I was. I think if that part was in earlier in the movie, I would have thought it was a lot funnier. But that was after like the little tricycle bit and all these, and I was like, they're just cycling through clown things, man. I was like, is he gonna spray her with a water flower next to
the goofs and gaffs were misplaced, and
a little bit.
Like it was a little too late
just
for some of
hit,
them.
some of them didn't. I feel like that one would hit normally, and it might hit if I was in a different mood. But yeah, I because I do like that idea where he just honks. I did find that amusing, but
it just was.
It's just like the end of the film after like 25 minutes. No goth GF. That's what it'll do to me.
Yeah. But then it has the hysterical scene where she hears sirens outside and she's like, "Oh, the police are arriving." And then she looks through the crack and then sees a car just zooming in as it hits her and everything. And I love that he's just listening to like this weird jazz album, and he's just like,
just
like bopping out, and then looks at her, and then is like looking at her, just sort of like hovering over her as the police run in, and then you see he's doing something, and then you see like bits of flesh hanging from his lip or whatever. He
starts eating her. Like, of course, he has to be a cannibal.
Yeah, I'm surprised that the cops gave him as much time to put his hands up and everything. And I'm like, what film am I watching here?
Right. Well, this is Hollywood cops. It's not real cops.
I know. And then the one thing I was not expecting was, yes, you see Art reaching down for his gun, and you think, okay, he's going to try to shoot. Won't be able to kill the cops. The cops are going to riddle him with bullets. No, Art just like takes the gun, sticks it in his mouth, and blows his brains out right there. And then that's whenever they're just like, oh my gosh, she's still alive, need to get her to a hospital or whatever. And then they start taking all the bodies to the coroner or whatever.
Or the medical examiner.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like every coroner like is very much like, it's whatever. Like it's like, even one of the people's like, how can you like think about eating while looking at these bodies? He's like, after you've seen an 8-month-old get a microwave, everything's old hat.
Yeah.
Doing that. And I'm like, okay, yeah, you're not wrong. Granted, he's nowhere near as annoying as the coroner in Friday the 13th, part 4.
No,
that one's by far the worst. This one at least is a little believable, but it is just like, freaking Halloween, man. Hopefully you enjoyed your 15 minutes of fame or whatever, because whenever he like opens the one bag, it's Mike's head all crushed in and everything, and then the other bag has Art the Clown in it, and it is really scary whenever he opens it, and Art's already has his head looking towards him, smiling like wide-eyed, and then he proceeds to like choke him as the lights flicker like crazy and everything else, and showing, oh, he's alive even though he has a big hole in the back of his head. And then it's a year later cut to where it goes to Victoria in the wheelchair, and she seems to be good sound mind, being like, oh yes, thank you doctor for helping me. It's like, oh, good luck with the interview. And it turns around and it's like, oh, it was her the whole time, the deformed face and everything. and then it just cuts to credits.
Yeah, I don't know. Ending was uninspired to me.
Yes, very uninspired. Like, I like the morgue bit, but
Right.
I feel like that's probably where it should have ended. Maybe.
Yeah, probably. I don't know.
But-
Even the morgue bit was like, I get why they were doing that, is to show he's still alive and he wasn't human. Actually, he's something scarier. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair.
None of it was super compelling to me at the end.
Yeah, which is unfortunate. It's like the first 2/3 are pretty dadgum solid, and the last third was like, oh, well,
They give you enough to work with. It just runs out of steam. Yeah.
it does and everything. So that was the unfortunate part. But still, for the start of a franchise and like for the tidbits that are really good,
Mhm.
there is value in this movie still
Yeah, oh, yeah,
and
absolutely.
everything.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's like the good thing about it. It's just in comparison to everything else, it's definitely like a bit weak, I guess. Like I said, it's like if you're a gore hound, you'll probably get way more enjoyment. Like, oh, that was
yeah.
sick. But for Aaron and I, we're not really. That's not what we get enjoyment out
yeah.
of at all.
I've already seen man-made horrors beyond my comprehension. I just don't get entertained by that on a movie screen.
Yeah. But aside from that, bub, anything else to say about the film or anything else? I agree.
I was terrified sometimes, so
That
kudos.
was- yeah, it
it
sounded
is
like-
scary. Yeah, it's a pretty scary movie at times, but a lot of it's jump scares and stuff. So
Yeah.
But
And
they do a good job of keeping the tension up. So good job. Yeah, great.
Yep. Like I said, it's not really one that I see myself ever turning on the TV to
No.
watch, as you could tell with my trepidation of having to watch this film again. But
No, yeah,
definitely glad it wasn't bad the second time round compared to the first. So, yeah, that was a great impersonation of Art using the restroom, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
Oh
just give
my
me about
gosh.
another 2 minutes of that.
Yeah.
Cover the rest of the walls.
Well, aside from that, bud, we're going to tease for the next episode of the podcast here.
The
And
first
this time-
Halloween ep.
Yeah. And this time we're actually probably going to be heading back nearly 80 years back from 2016 and everything to focus on a sequel to a film that we have seen before. And needless to say, it focuses on a titular character that also comes back to life like Art did.
Is this like Frankenstein Bride of Frankenstein?
Right on the money. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely hit it out of the park there and everything. So
80 years is a good hint.
yes, good. Okay,
we're dealing with some black and white shit. What is this?
Yeah, that's absolutely it. All right. Well,
Nice.
thank you so much for listening to this episode, and we'll see y'all again next time when we're popping the scary with The Bride of Frankenstein. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube, Castbox, or iTunes platforms to stay up to date when new episodes drop. To see what Aaron and I are up to, check out our respective Twitter accounts. For me, it is @ColeKirkVA, and for Aaron, it is @AnimalGameDev. Thank you all so much for listening to our podcast. We'll speak to you all again next time when we're popping the scary.